supply chains are really shifting, and that's going to impact the bottom line. Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of Pioneers Pathway Podcast. You will obviously, I'm sure you will remember both of our faces by now. But let me introduce us. My name's Liam, and I am joined today by my co-host Sharia. Sharia, how are you doing? You all good?
All good, my friend. All good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We've got a really interesting topic to discuss today, actually. Really, personally, I love talking about this industry. I think it's so interesting. FMCG, to which, if you don't know what that means, fast-moving consumer goods. So, maybe to start off with the foundation to it, I like to say FMCG is what you find in the supermarket. Um, Maybe now people say what you can find on Amazon, but yeah, I think more focus is what if you go into a supermarket, what can you find there? And that really sums up FMCG. Right, really interesting industry. Some big players out there, right? What do you think about it, Shara?
Well, no, look, as you said, the easiest way to describe it is, and a very simple example is the stuff you see on your supermarket shelves, right?
Yeah,
So, look, that basically goes to show that most of your essential items are FMCG. And
yeah,
it's quite interesting to know that how the industry works, how they're priced, generally what can you expect in the market. So I know obviously you have done a research project on this in M&A. So do you want to just tell us any trends you saw and give us any more background information?
yeah. So yeah, I've always been interested in the FMCG industry. It's an industry which is never going to die because and to say it bluntly, we always have to eat and we always have to drink and we're always going to need those sorts of products, cleaning products, and potentially beauty products, but it's not a cyclical industry if you understand what I mean. There's always going to be demand, but it is interesting. There's a high level of competition. There are so many players in there, so many players in there. We've got the big players, we've got the smaller players. I'd say over the last 10 years, we've really seen a increase in competition from smaller brands. They're really targeting niches. They're targeting a niche customer segment, and they're really going against the bigger players, the likes of Unilever, and yeah, Unilever. There's Unilever. What else? What else can who else?
Nestle,
Yeah,
Kellogg's.
Nestle as well, Kellogg's, but also looking at the beauty companies, and even sort of it goes into sort of cleaning products as well. There's a really large amount of players out there, and yeah, we're seeing increased competition. The supply chain is very complex and is increasing in its complexity. And then we just look at the fact that you've got loads of raw materials going into this, and when that's together with complex supply chains sort of come together, we're looking at decreasing price margins, and it's going to be a intense competition out there, and that's what is hurting profitability in the industry.
And there's another very interesting thing that hasn't been talked about as much recently, right? But there are lots of intermediaries. So obviously, in the case of foods, you have the supermarket. In case of cosmetics, you have drugstores. But lately, we're seeing a shift, right? We're going from B2C, and now we're shifting D2C. I'm sure that's something you would have noticed, right? We're seeing our producers contacting and dealing with our customers directly. I mean, I'm sure that's something you would have noticed, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's increasing as you see smaller brands coming into play, right? And the competition there. Yeah, usually you only dealt with the likes of the big supermarket chains, the online e-commerce websites. But slowly and surely you're seeing more brand engagement specifically from the producers and the designers. And you're trying to foster that sort of it's that brand image that brand reliability and the sense of sort of the connection between that. And yeah, that's an interesting part. And sort of, people become used to a specific brand. They become used to the brand image and the what the image is being constructed, and that means that people there's less. If you're not interested in price as a priority, you're interested in what the brand provides to you and your lifestyle, and that's going to really impact people's choices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're seeing a shift in terms of customer loyalty, right? Your traditional big brands, maybe they're not aligning with the younger generation's values as much, right? So the younger generation tends to prioritize sustainability and these things a lot more than the older generation. And I think that's where, some of the newer players are really, sticking out, right? So especially, as we're becoming a lot more health conscious, we're realizing that we don't want as many preservatives in our food and drink, for example, because obviously that's a classic example we've been speaking about. So what's happening
What
now?
I'd say, yeah,
Go for it.
sorry to interrupt you there. Now, what I'd say is, I'd say I boil that down to uh, three key issues on. Okay, we're talking about the consumer front. We can talk about the back end, and maybe we'll talk about that a bit later on. But in terms of the consumer front, what you're seeing is that increasingly FMCG players are sort of adopting strategic pricing, right? And they've learned that you can't do flat sort of level of pricing for all customer segments, all locations, and all sorts of products. And so there's more differentials within the pricing levels. But you're also seeing sort of that shift towards a digital sort of transformation, right? And that's really important when you're trying to reach new customer segments, but also the younger generation, as you were saying. I know they're sustainable, but they're also um, going to be on their phones, on their screens, right? And that's where they're trying to buy into new segments, right?
Yeah, and would you say, I mean, personally, I would say it's down to logistics, right? I think as transportation logistics have improved so much, it's a lot easier for these brands to deal with their customers directly, right? Because before you have to sell to these supermarkets, cosmetic stores in bulk. But now you don't have to do that, right? You could sell your goods to your customers at a much cheaper rate. You don't have to be selling to them in bulk. And because of that, it's become a lot easier, and there's been a rapid change in the dynamic.
What I'd say, yeah, I'd say that's true. But what I believe is one of the fundamental factors in this is that in the heyday you would have a manufacturer or an FMCG company which focuses on one product, whether that's soap or whether that's rice or whether that's a specific drink. You have that. What you're having now is that big players are sort of combining huge portfolio of different products. And so what you have then is that they now think, oh, let's create our own platform and let's create our own sort of channels to specific customers. There's no need to go through a supermarket or a distributor. You go directly to the customers. So that sort of increasing portfolio. But you also have customers who are willing not have to just go to the supermarket, but go directly to these players, right? They've given an example maybe when you go and buy beauty makeup, usually you used to go to the supermarket and you'd buy beauty makeup, you'd go to Boots or some other pharmacies. Now they're going directly to the producers, the companies, the brand themselves, and they're going to specifically buy from them. You go now it's e-commerce, but yeah, these brands are opening up shops. They have different outlets for selling it, so you would go directly. So you're cutting out the middleman there. So I think that's a big change.
And what do you think the impact of guys like Blinkit, Getir, all these guys who have their own dark stores, and what they're doing is they have all these things stored up and they bring it to the house in 10 minutes. So how do you think that's playing into this?
I think logistically and on the back end, with supply chains and things like that, the whole picture's radically transforming. What you're having is, yeah, there are complex supply chains, but what they're now pushing on is to increase customer reliability, customer service, delivery times, product quality, and that is just making when you have these regional players, these new startups coming in there, it's really creating good competition, I think, for the bigger players. They're having to really innovate, change how they're doing things to really cut costs and make their products much more competitive. And that's what we're seeing, right? That's what we're seeing, especially with inflationary pressure, but also very unstable supply chains. You're having at the moment with the rise of tariffs, but also with instability just in global trade in general, supply chains are really shifting, and that's going to impact the bottom line. And so FMCG firms have to really compete on that. And no, I like to say like I know a lot of these players have been competing for a long time, but if you come up with an idea in an FMCG world, it's relatively simple to be able to get that into production and start selling that, right? Very simple. Obviously, I'm over. I'm not. There are complexities in it, but what I'm saying is, on average, compare running an FMCG product company compared to running an airline. It's going to be a lot easier to do this because you can do it on a smaller scale, right? And that means that there's more chance of new entrants, more chance of competition, and that's going to only, I think, in the long term, make this industry much more leaner.
Yeah, no, absolutely raised a series of very valid points there. I mean, it's to conclude in a way, I guess, it's quite clear that because in the last few years, especially, say not even the last 4, 5, in 2, 3, in the last 2, 3 years, there's been a rapid change, hasn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a rapid change. The digital landscape has changed. The ways of doing shopping has changed, but also consumer preferences have changed, and it's made the industry in the short term very complex and very difficult to navigate. But in the long term, hopefully that will breed more reliability and better quality.
And if you were to get out your Mystic Pool, where do you see it, going in the next 5 years?
Fundamentally, I think the big players are still going to be there. Nestle, Unilever, all of those big players are going to be there. What I think they're going to do now is they're going to go on a spending spree. And I think they're going to start buying up challenger brands, get them under their own portfolio, because in the end of the day, when you build a large portfolio, you've got the synergies, you've got economies of scale, and it works well. So I think you're going to see a big market for M&A deals, purchases, investment. But I also think you're going to see a lot of well-known brands. I'm not saying companies, but the brand names, brand labels go under and stop being operated, because what you're finding is that the big mainstay brands of the last 15 years are just not going to be effective for the next 10, 15 years.
Great. No, that's
Yeah.
very interesting.
No, really interesting stuff. So hopefully we'll try and have some more episodes on this in the next few months. It'll be really interesting to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, if you are someone who has their own FMCG product and you're in this space, do reach out to us. The email is always in the description. But for now, thank you for listening.
Thank you.